Hello, and welcome to today's webcast, Closing the Endpoint Security Gap, the Crucial Role of Printers in Securing Your Environment. I'm Dan Lorman, and I'm the CSO and Chief Strategist for Security Mentor Incorporated, and a Senior Fellow for the Center for Digital Government. I'm excited to serve as the host for today's webcast. Thanks for joining us. We're going to have a great discussion over the next 45 minutes. We just have a few housekeeping notes that we'd like you to take a look at. Also, like you to know that during the webcast, you will be able to connect with your peers via LinkedIn and Twitter. For those of you on Twitter, please use hashtag GovTechLive or hashtag GovLive to share key takeaways, quotes, and learnings from today's webcast. You can also find a copy of other printer security resources in the resource widget at the bottom of the screen. There will be opportunities for you to ask questions, so we certainly, beyond the housekeeping notes there, we encourage you to submit your questions. We're going to be getting to those near the end of 45 minutes. I'd like to start off by introducing our distinguished panelists. We're really excited today to be joined by Tommy Gartner, the Chief Technology Officer of HP Federal and of SLED, State Local Government Education. Tommy is basically authority over HP's federal agencies, higher education, K-12, as well as federal integrators. His current responsibilities include technology leadership, strategic technology plans, product and technology strategies, Salesforce technical support, and customer and partner relationships. Previously, Tommy has served as the Chief Technology Officer for Jacobs Engineering sector, Cytor, Mantech, and earlier in his career, he was Senior Technical Executive at Raytheon. In the U.S. Navy, he served as a Deputy for Science and Technology for the Chief of Naval Research, and he oversaw the Navy's Deep Submergence Program as well as the Advanced Technology Program. He also commanded the nuclear submarine USS San Juan, which is a pretty exciting background. Tommy, welcome. It's great to have you with us today.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Great to be here.
Yeah, thanks. We're going to talk a little bit more, hear some of your stories, so really excited about that. Also want to introduce our Michael Howard, our other guest on the panel. He's the HP Head of Security and Analytics Practice. Michael heads up the worldwide security team that educates and evaluates risks through security audits and supports customers to create comprehensive security policies. Before joining HP, Michael had held numerous positions with the U.S. Naval Intelligence and Department of Defense focused on security. He's a certified, long list of certifications here, GIAC, CSCS, and CHP professional, and a certified cryptologist. So, Michael, welcome. It's great to have you with us.
Great. Thank you very much. It's great to be here. Looking forward to the discussions.
Going to be great. Thank you. And I just want to quickly go over the agenda for the next 40 minutes or so. I'm just going to give a real quick overview of this hot topic, why it's so important, basically the endpoint security risks. We're going to have the panel discussion. We have a couple of best practice examples and stories from HP. And then we're going to get to the bottom of the hour. We're going to get to your questions and some final thoughts and words of wisdom from HP and from our panelists. So, well, without further ado, we just want to dive in. And if you think about this topic of closing the endpoint security gap, you know, there are so many endpoints that we're seeing in the industry. Of course, with the Internet of Things, Cisco calls it the Internet of Everything. There's so many different devices that are out there. And yet, of course, printers are front and center in this whole discussion. So you see right smack dab in the middle of this diagram, you see the printer there. And it's been something we've had, you know, going back decades, but it's playing a more crucial role than ever. So many, you know, different aspects of managed print that come into play, both in people's homes during this COVID-19 crisis, the global pandemic, and also certainly in office situations. And we're going to talk about those. I just want to mention that there was a report, a white paper that you can go out and you can download for free at the eRepublic website from HP and eRepublic, done by just recently, really came out in the last several months, called Managed Print Services and the Role of Printers in Endpoint Security. There's a lot of great materials that are presented in this, and I just want to highlight this one quote, which I think is really important. 41% of respondents said their organizations use network security on printers. 55% did so for mobile devices. 83% did so for desktops and laptops. So clearly, you know, a lot of people are not paying attention the same level to those printers, and we're going to talk about that. But before we dive into the panel, we do want to do a couple poll questions. We want to get your input on this, and so we want to start with this question, and we certainly want you to respond, all attendees. What percentage of your employees were working remotely pre-COVID? And your options here are 0 to 20%, 20 to 50%, or 50% or more, or none. I'm sure there's probably somebody. But again, the question is, what percentage of your employees were working remotely pre-COVID? So we're going to get those poll results, and maybe while we're waiting for that, Tommy, I mean, what have you seen overall as we're waiting? I'm going to push the poll results here in a second. In your experience, what was people seeing pre-COVID in the industry?
Well, I think the difference obviously is, you know, when you're working from home, your home network is not protected like your corporate network is. You know, even my network, I've got 7 computers in my office, all of them HP branded, all of them different, and they're connected to a gigabit network internal to the house that's running on a wired network. And I've got protections here that, you know, come close to a corporate level, but still not quite there. I just don't have the resources, and I don't have a SOC or a 24-hour man facility to protect my network at home. And a lot of people who are going home and working from home for the first time, they don't have that protection. And I think we'll discuss later, but you're only as strong as the weakest link in your protection chain. And that's an old sea story from a couple old sailors that are talking to you today. But the weak link in your network is likely your printer. That's been known in the past, and we can discuss that later. But the reason we're asking, why are you working from home more now than you were before? It brings up the issue of security, and specifically print security.
Yeah, great. Well, these are some results we got back. We have about 2/3 of the people, 67.6%, said 0 to 20% before COVID. It's, wow, 5.9% between 20 and 50, of 5.9% and 50% or more, and then about over 20% said none. So we thanks for that answer, Tommy. Appreciate that. We're going to ask one more poll question, then we're going to dive into the panel. But what percent of employees are working remotely now? So you had pre-COVID, and then, you know, what percentage are working now? And, you know, we'll let this run a moment or two, and then we'll look at the results. But Michael, I mean, what have you seen kind of pre versus post with percentages? And obviously we're going to see, I don't know the results we're going to see here, but do those first poll results surprise you at all? The low numbers before, and what have you seen in the industry?
No, the first numbers don't surprise me at all. I think that was very typical of what we saw with large organizations, including our own HP. That's what we saw. But, you know, one of the things that we've noticed is before the pandemic forced us into the remote scenarios, we were seeing cybersecurity risks were already intensifying at a very steady pace. What we have seen since the pandemic, though, is that we're seeing organizations are specifically being targeted, and it's a lot of enterprise users that are now working from home that they're being targeted. And this, you know, this reason Tommy brought up is the new edge has moved from the corporate firewall to every single home and every remote worker and the endpoints. Now, the issues with that is you're now blending that in with your home networks, and none of us were probably as secure at home as we were in the office in the first place. And when you think about all the IoT devices that might be hanging on your home network, it opens up that threat landscape in a tremendous way. So you may have digital thermostats in your home. We've seen even things like Bluetooth irons connected to the home, refrigerators. All of those devices introduce risk. And now you have that printer, which is probably not secured in the same fashion that it was when you were in the office, and certainly not monitored and managed. So it just opens up the risk, and it's harder to make sure that you're maintaining what the security posture should be at your corporation.
Great, thanks for that answer. Really good. And so the numbers just came back. Maybe you can comment quickly, Michael. But less than 50%, only 23, but more than 50%. Over 56, almost 57%. All 13.3%, 6.7% said none. So really a huge shift. Obviously, a lot of people who are listening today, watching this broadcast, are moved to working from home, probably watching from home. Do those numbers surprise you at all?
No, they don't. And again, we're seeing the same thing at our corporation that we're driving. And what this is going to create is it's going to create the adoption of cloud services and cloud access much greater into home offices now. And it's going to accelerate the speed of which we're going to see companies start coming out with solutions around the networking at home.
Well, and we're not going back either, Michael. We're not going back. This has become the norm, and what people are realizing, I can be just effective working from home, have a lot more flexibility. I live in the D.C. area. I was 3 hours a day on the highways going back and forth into the Warner Theater where our offices are right across from the White House for HP in the D.C. area. And that's just an unproductive 3 hours. You knew you had a bad traffic day when you were listening to NPR and you heard repeating stories that you heard at the first of your drive, and now you're getting towards the end of it. It's going to change because people like being at home for the most part. They enjoy the flexibility to get up and 5 minutes later you're at your computer. It is going to be a new way of doing business, and I think we will be more effective in the production of, but not every industry. Some you need that face-to-face on a routine basis. I think we will have a hybrid environment once we have a vaccine. But the technology risk, there's risk in the transport as well. Getting on a plane and having your computer or trying to print from a remote hotel location, there is risk in that too. And so you've eliminated a lot of that while you've taken on a bigger risk from the network.
Tommy, thanks so much for that. And I want to dive into some questions in the discussion. And I think we all have seen that working from home priority. But as we go through these questions, and again, we do want to hear questions from the audience, so please send in your questions now. We'll be getting to them in about 20 minutes. But I'll start with Tommy. This question for you. Are security assessments routinely conducted to create security baselines? And where are the assessments? Do they encompass all the endpoints? And does that include print devices? I mean, what are you seeing? Do people do those assessments, and are they including managed print in those endpoint security assessments?
And in the federal government, they're required to. All companies are required to conform with NIST standards in the cybersecurity realm. And a specific one of NIST 800-171 is when they sign a contract with the federal government, they are attesting that they follow that 171 standard. The problem that the government is finding out is there's a lot of companies that say that they're following the standard, but don't either understand it or haven't fully investigated whether they are or not. They're kind of doing it, but not to the extent that is implied or meant by the standard. And that's why they're driving at DOD to a third-party certification of standards. And it's called the CMMC, Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification. And that will be coming on probably as early as November, certainly sometime next year. But that's going to be, I think, the process that you're going to find throughout government. And I think that process will go from the DOD to all of the federal and get into state and local governments is let's check and make sure that we're all in this together. Damage to one is damage to all. And let's have third-party review and validation that what we know. And the good part of that is you start trading knowledge between companies. You trade cybersecurity information and insights, and when a third-party inspector sees something that you're doing well, they can pass that on and protect another company as well. And it's not going to be limited to just the PCs, workstations on the corporate networks. It's going to be in the printers as well, and frankly, any IoT device.
Fantastic. Well, Michael, are those analytics and security assessment results used to create a roadmap for improving risk and securing that baseline? I mean, how do you see people utilizing those risk assessments?
Yeah, and that's an interesting question. So that is what my team does, is we go out and we do security assessments, and we do bring in the print environment as we're doing that to make sure that we're looking at every aspect. What we have discovered in doing those over the years is that's largely, as you were saying in the first numbers today, that is largely an overlooked area, and there's a lot of unknowns around print environments for most clients that we have out there. It does validate for our roadmap of what solutions we see that customers need based on the gaps that we're identifying as we do security assessments. But also we sit down with the customers after we've done the security assessment, and we create a realistic roadmap looking at what are the highest risk areas to an environment, and which ones do you need to take care of immediately, and which ones can you work into your plan that you remediate over a longer period of time. And of course, that all depends on resources and costing and everything you're doing. But we sit down and try and help all of our customers understand, here's where you are today. You're stacking up like this the rest of the industry of the assessments that we've been doing. And then here's where we can take you and help you get these done. A lot of them are very simple ones that are introducing a lot of risk in the print environment. And it just requires doing basic cyber hygiene to put some of the controls in place and lock down some of these open ports that might be out there creating vulnerabilities for you.
Great, thanks. Tommy, when we were preparing for this panel, you told some amazing, I thought very, very entertaining, but also interesting and fascinating and actually very informative stories from DEF CON. I was wondering if you could share that story with us and kind of what that journey was, and regarding print and the whole presentation out at DEF CON.
Yeah, I'd love to, Dan. This is something that Michael and I do every year. This year is going to be an exception, but we'll spend a couple of weeks in Las Vegas, first attending the Black Hat Conference, and then staying around for the 3-day DEF CON conference. Now DEF CON used to be the hottest and coolest thing to do if you're a hacker, and really a hackers convention. Now B-Side, some others may have taken its place, but the first thing I want to note is that printers are kind of that weak link in the chain, as I mentioned earlier. And if you've never been to a hackathon or met some people that are just hobbyists that like to hack for hobby, or some are professionals that they run pen testing organizations, so they work for a group, and their responsibilities in their workday is to go check out and see if they can enter in and be a certified ethical hacker and get into networks and let the boss know we have vulnerabilities. But it's a fun thing to do. I usually held on weekends in my area. I love to sit in on them, and I learn from the young technical experts every time I go to one. And almost universally, when the capture the flag event occurs and you're supposed to break into a network, and the first one to break in and get the file that's been inserted there that gives you a code, and you get the code, you win the capture the flag, they always will try to get through the printer first. And what is fun is to see that some of the young kids that are in these events, they know if it's an HP printer, let's try something else. And they've got, second, but because we have very secure printers. We have the most secure printers in the world. And that's what brought up this story from DEF CON last year. A company, NCC Group, it's a Spanish company that was designed and does pen testing, had a presentation. And the presentation was, why should you fear your mundane office printer. And I thought, well, this sounds interesting. And hey, big ballroom and the Caesar's Palace, maybe 1,000 people there. And I wander in, I sit on the front row because I don't see that well and don't hear that good. So, but I wanted to hear what they were going to say about the vulnerabilities of printers. And one of the first slides they put up was an advertisement that HP has that says, "World's most secure printers." And the comment the presenters made was, "We're going to see about that." And I thought, oh, this is going to be really entertaining. And I know we have the world's most secure printer. I know because the lawyers let me tell you that. And if I wasn't able to convince the lawyers that we did, they wouldn't. They say, no, you're at risk. You can't say these things out in public. But we do, and we print it out in public. We say it out in public. And so NCC Group went through 56-page presentation, took about an hour. They tested 6 enterprise printers, is what they said. And at the end of the day, they went through all the vulnerabilities they tested, spent about 6 months testing these machines. And at the end of the day, they came up with vulnerabilities. And the HP printer, and they said it was an enterprise printer. It turns out it wasn't. It was one of our low-cost home printers. I think I was told by our print security expert that the price on this thing was $50. It wasn't hundreds of dollars in an enterprise printer, if not thousands of dollars, depending on the brand, that you would pay for a real class enterprise printer. So we were fighting above our weight category. We're punching above the weight as a home printer versus the office enterprise printer. But NCC came up with 5 vulnerabilities, and that's really how I knew that it wasn't our enterprise printer, because I knew we didn't have these vulnerabilities. I thought they must have done something wrong. And then when I found out, yeah, our $50 printer did have these vulnerabilities, but still, our $50 printer compared to 5 other enterprise printers from 5 different companies, there was only one company that had a comparative number of defects. Every other of the 4 companies had anywhere from 2 to 3 times the number of defects that were tested. And so I went up to the guys afterward and said, hey, you left off the last slide. And they said, well, what was that? I said, well, the last slide should have said, and we confirmed that HP has the world's most secure printers. They said, well, we really didn't test for that. But boy, the facts are in the presentation. And it gets to the point of when you're buying a printer, the acquisition process, either the federal, state government, or even when you're buying for your home office, the acquisition process has to be security first. Printers are not commodities. They are different. They may look the same. They may produce the same page, maybe at the same speed, maybe not, maybe at the same quality, maybe not. Some of them get jammed more than others, but the key decision in any acquisition of a printer has to be how secure is it, how protective is your network, and how are you going to protect your data by protecting your printer.
Thank you so much. That's a great story. I love that story. It's really, I can picture, I can picture the ballroom, Tommy. You tell it so well. So thank you for that. And we still want to keep hearing the questions from the audience. So send in your questions now for Tommy, for Michael. We're going to get to those in about 5 or 7 minutes. But Michael, I want to kind of, what Tommy was just talking about with the procurement process. I know we've talked about some of these topics, earlier. When organizations are making that decision, what are you seeing? Security capabilities versus cost, and how do organizations, A, what should they be doing, but B, what are they doing? Are people doing exactly what Tommy just talked about? They're just kind of going with the low cost, and especially when you're thinking about managed print or page per, cost per sheet of paper or print. I mean, what are your thoughts in that area?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And, what we've seen, and we're starting to see this migrate over the last 4 or 5 years, and especially in managed print environments, we're starting to see that it's moving away from a procurement decision and, lowest cost and can it staple and can it do double-sided, moving over to where security teams are starting to get involved. And that happens whenever you start bringing in the assessments to assess your current print environment. and then really understand what are your driving security concerns as you're designing your new print environment, if you're updating, or your buying patterns that you're seeing. So what we're seeing is that when you get security teams involved, it quickly turns the buying decisions around to what are the security features, what should we be putting on our networks, how do we want our security controls to be monitored and managed and run. And when we see that maybe an RFP comes in, a request for proposal, or any of the queries coming into HP that are only looking at the cost and the features and functions of the device, we know at that point that they have not looked at it from a security perspective. And that can get you in trouble really quickly, because if you don't understand what your requirements are and what your policies and industry standards are that you're trying to comply with for endpoint devices, it's hard to make those buying decisions. So the first thing is understanding what are your requirements, and then making sure that as you're putting out bids to vendors to bring you the devices in, that you're clearly doing it with security in mind, number one, of how you can secure those on your devices, and then flip it to looking at the features and functions and how they're managed.
Great, great. Well, Tommy, I want to go to a couple other questions here. When we think about printers on the network, how can we, first of all, are printers as secure as PCs on networks? Are they more or less? Can they be more secure? And what prevents, attacks against printers? I mean, what are you seeing out there?
Well, let's take the first question first. How is the comparative printer to PC security? In general, the printers are much less secure, but at HP, different story. And the reason is because of our investments in our HP labs, where we're putting in somewhere between $1.5 billion and $3 billion a year, most of that in cybersecurity improvements to our products and to our future products. We're rolling out every year new security regimes. And the difference is when we design our printers or we design our PCs, a very common security architecture for the two of them, because they're both very similar machines. They both have CPUs. They both have hard drives. They both have USB ports. It's just the form factor that's different. But the security requirements are the same. The Ethernet inputs are bringing the same threat vectors to the surface of those platforms. And so you've got to treat them very similar. And by investing that much money into laboratory research, we're able to keep up to speed on both platforms, as well as our 3D print platforms, which have the same components in there and the same security risk. And so we're able to keep those up at a very high level. The truth is that the advanced persistent threat, the hacker community out there, they're getting better every year. They're investing billions of dollars to attack our machines. So we need to keep improving year after year after year to continue to be the best. If we sat back and said, hey, we're the best, the lawyers say we are, we don't need to do anything more, let's just cut out $1 billion of expense and quit investing in that area, we'd be in trouble in no time. So we've got to keep the investment going. The printers and our products, if you've got an all HP network, are just as secure as the PCs today, but it's because we have security professionals like Vali Ali, Siobhan Albright, who are just pros at what they do and have team of people working for them that are experts in this field and staying on top of the latest technology and trends.
Thanks for that. That's really helpful. The HP Labs is really, that's a difference maker. Michael, as you think about those assessment results and what you're seeing, and you get all the numbers and analytics, and who are you typically dealing with in enterprises around? Is it around these topics? Is it the security office? Is it more the infrastructure, the CTO, the CSO? Who typically is making these decisions in the government space? And how does that interaction work? I mean, and who maybe should be that interaction with? Are the security teams getting involved in this, or most HP organizations, are you dealing with other people in the enterprise?
You know, the companies that are doing the best at securing their environments now are the ones that are leaning in with all of those departments that you're talking about, right? You have to have your print infrastructure experts involved, but they need to have security and they need to have governance and compliance also to make sure as you're designing how you're going to deploy these devices and what are the security controls that you're going to put in place are where they need to be designed into. So it really is a matter of bringing an entire team together, looking at it from not only a security perspective, but a functionality perspective, a user perspective, bringing all those groups together to make sure that you're implementing it the right way. I mean, the reality is, and Tommy talks about all the investments that we're putting in our devices, that's fantastic. But again, if you don't do the basic cyber hygiene and evaluate what you need to set it up on your environment, you may be putting a secure device in an environment that's very unsecure. So we know that 93% of all breaches that happen are due to human error. So as we build these features into our devices, it's how do we help protect end users from themselves and at the same time help security teams and infrastructure teams design the right solutions to put in place to make sure that you're prepared for detecting whenever something happens and you see that anomalous behavior, you can jump on it right away and quarantine it and get it off. And with all the features we built into our devices, that allows for that, but it's still critical that you work with the teams for the correct deployment of those solutions.
So, Michael, one quick follow-up on that. I mean, that sounds like a great best practice. Are governments doing that? I mean, I know you don't want to name names and pick on anybody here, but by and large, is that happening out there, or is there do we have a long way to go? As far as really getting those security teams engaged with those managed print environments. I mean, is this an area of improvement for many people?
Yeah, there are, and it depends on what level of government you're in, right? Obviously, when we're with the federal government and their high secure sites, we usually see that they're very robust security assessments that they're doing and their deployments. As we start moving down lower the stack and you get into state and local government, I'm sorry, can you hear me okay now?
Yeah, I'm hearing you. Yeah, you're okay.
Okay. So as we start moving down the stack into state and local governments, then what you see is it's overlooked a lot, and they don't have the budgets.
I'm still hearing you. So, Tommy, I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm still hearing
good.
Michael.
Yeah, maybe
continue on, Michael.
Yeah, so I think when you get down into the lower agencies, they may not have the budgets, and then you have some issues that start coming up. But when for the most part, we see the government is a little bit better on what they're doing for deployments of printing and all endpoints. They're still not at the top. We find financial services at that industry is always leading in security for obvious reasons. But the government is always close, and they like to drive the standards, and that always is helpful from a vendor perspective.
I worked in government for 27 years. I was part of the government IC and the Navy, and 12 of those years I was doing procurements and budgeting for the government. And my observation as an insider was every government employee that I knew and I met and I worked with, they wanted to do the very best thing and the right thing for the citizens of this country. We have great government people. And I'm sure my experience was federal, but I'm sure the same thing can be said about the state governments and the local governments. People try their darndest to do the right thing. The problem occurs is sometimes you're constrained by money. You want to do the right thing. You don't have the funds to do it. Sometimes it's the acquisition process that has tied the hands. You want to get the best security for your mission. You can't do it because the acquisition process dumbs down the requirements. It goes to the lowest common denominator, and they select the lowest cost. And that's a mistake with the system. It's not the people, it's the system. And they need to be working at a level with security is the principal decision point. I said this before, but I can't say it enough. Cost, performance, and schedule are important, but you trade those off only after you selected the best security.
Thanks for that, Tommy. Appreciate it. We have time for one more question. I want to give you guys an opportunity to kind of give us some closing thoughts, but I want to kind of end on this question. where do you see the future of technology in this managed print area? Where are we going? I guess you say post-COVID, but really as we look at the second half of 2020 and 2021 and beyond, maybe each of you could just give us a couple bullet points on where is this going? Michael, maybe you first.
Yeah, so I think what we're seeing with the push to remote offices, as I said earlier, I think we're going to see cloud development and the adoption of the clouds increase at a phenomenal pace. As security professionals before this pandemic, there was still a lot of discussions I had with CISOs that they were very skeptical of it and how do you make it work. But we've been forced into that box that we're going to have to figure out how do we do more remotely. One of the other things that we're going to have, vendors are going to have to work on very quickly is how do you extend that new edge that we have with the remote working to where we can still have the same tools and the same analytics to be able to secure, monitor, and manage and make intelligent business decisions about what we're seeing that's going on in the home offices, which are an extension of our own office. I think we're also going to see corporations are going to have to invest in buying possibly new networks for people working from home if you want to segment them to make sure that you don't have what's going on with home use and children and education on a network that could contaminate your business network. So I think we're going to see a lot more drive in how do we manage remote workers and how do we make sure that we're setting up and configuring these networks that we may not have control over in a more secure fashion to not introduce risks to our environment.
That's great, thanks. Tommy, specifically, as you look at the future, how do you see things changing in the managed print world and/or the whole technology space around?
I'm more of a technologist. Michael is more of an operator, a systems op, and has that security principles and how you operate a security system in mind. But from a technology point of view, I think Michael's right on point. There'll be more entry to the cloud as long as we have clouds. And I think one day we'll no longer need a cloud. But for the near term, we're going to have clouds. The cloud is only as secure as the weakest link in the system, and it's only as secure as your endpoints. If you don't have secure endpoints, your cloud is at risk. And no matter how many clouds you use, you're putting them all at risk with insecure endpoints. So cloud security starts with the endpoint. And if you understand that, you're in the right track. The things I stay awake at night and worry about is the crypto security and the encryption process. And NIST is doing a great job. I'm a big fan of Dr. Walt Copen, the head of NIST. I think he's one of the best people in government today. And they're doing a great job of trying to prepare for the next generation of crypto security. The post-quantum security methods, there are 150 algorithms that have been knocked down to 26. And Dr. Copen told me that hopefully by next year, they'll select the 3 to 5 to go forward with. That'll give you protection against the advent of quantum techniques and quantum information science that can hack into data that's encrypted and read it in short order. Current algorithms were designed to be 100-year brute force hack proof, but with the advance of technology, that is not longer so, and potential for hours before they're hacked. And you really have security if your data can be hacked from an encrypted source within hours. So that's one of my concerns. It follows into the quantum systems itself. I think they're going to be more. Well, one of the things that I think has great potential is quantum memory, which may allow every printer of the future to have a quantum memory card in there that can contain as much information as the cloud does today. And so you could have a network of computers and printers with quantum memory that substitute for a cloud, at least an on-premise cloud. And I think that's a very exciting world to look at, and it makes the printer much more than it is today. If you look at your phone today, your phone is doing many functions that it took 7 or 8 products to do 20 years ago. And I see the printer is moving in that direction. It's going to be doing many functions, much more than just putting ink on paper. And it's going to be a new device with new functionality and use. And it's going to be done through the new technologies we're exploring today in HP labs and in other companies.
Thanks so much for that. I appreciate it. Well, we're running down the last 5 minutes here. I just want to just give each of you one final kind of opportunity, maybe one, takeaway, one word of wisdom that somebody's thinking about this session, maybe a week from now, a couple weeks from now. What one bit of, word of wisdom or advice would you give, Michael, as far as, it could be something we already said, just want to reiterate something that we said during the last 45 minutes, or something new we didn't get a chance to talk about, but any final takeaways you can give us, Michael?
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the areas that we're seeing some high risk in with the remote workers is all around patching. And my advice to everybody out there is, as you're looking at your people that are working from home, as you're looking at even in your offices, ensuring that you're staying up on patches, because as we're seeing security events occurring at a phenomenal pace, that's the way vendors are fixing them, is through patching. And so you have to keep that current. When you look at all your home users today, look at all those IoT devices that they have on, and make sure that you're at least making recommendations, even if you're not able to control those IoT devices, that at least your users know enough to patch them, make sure that they have the right passwords on them, and it's keeping people from getting into your home networks and then being able to leverage these devices that are outside of that corporate firewall to do damage and get back in. So that would be my advice, is take the simple, easy steps first. And I can't reiterate enough. Every security assessment we see, the deficiencies are around patching, and that's what adds a lot of vulnerabilities. So keep that in mind as you're thinking about who's working at home today.
Thanks so much. Tommy, same question to you. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, when I left business school, I came out with the principal takeaway from the time I spent in school was that every executive of any company is a salesperson. So a lot of executive thinks, well, no, I've got this vice president or senior vice president for business development or sales. They do that function. I'm going to be a technical engineer or marketing or finance or whatever, but the sales guys can handle the sales. No, if you're a senior executive in a company, you're selling your company every day. You're trying to make it better so the sales go faster and easier and smoother every sale. Now today, I'm going to apply that principle I learned in business school to cybersecurity. Every executive in any company needs to be a cybersecurity expert. They can no longer go with their head in the sand and think, my CIO's got that covered, I don't need to worry about it. Now, it's what we call at HP the T-shaped individual. You got to have depth in your expert level of knowledge in your field. So as a mechanical engineer, I need to know that field and heat transfer and fluid flow, statics, dynamics better than anybody else in my company. But I have to have breadth across other technologies in electrical, chemical, civil engineer. And I need to have that breadth to understand our products better. I also, as a senior executive, need to know what's going on in the cyber field. I need to know what's going on in finance and operations, as well as the sales. But every executive can't be immune and agnostic, and don't tell me I don't understand when it comes to cyber. They need to have basic understanding of what the threats are and what the potential damage to their company is in order to make good purchasing decisions, in order to protect their company at the maximum. So that's my takeaway is this is an important area for everybody in business as well as everybody in government.
Thank you so much for that, Tommy. Appreciate it. I want to be respectful of our time commitment, and so we're going to have to wrap it up here. In closing, I really would like to thank our two panelists, Tommy Gartner, Chief Technology Officer, HP Federal and SLED, Michael Howard, the HP Head of Security and Analytics Practice, for a great discussion this afternoon. Really thought-provoking, very interesting. Thank you guys so much. And also want to thank our audience for spending time with us. And if you'd like to download your certificate of attendance, you can do so now by clicking on the certification icon at the bottom of the screen. We look forward to seeing you again soon at another government technology event. We hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you very much.